So let's do the discussions now. I have here with me Anthony Efa, Member of Parliament for Sikuma Odobing Brakwa, and he's a Member of Parliament's Finance, Works and Housing Committees. Thanks for joining me, Andrew.
Thank you.
First name is okay, right?
Yes, Anthony.
Anthony.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Anthony is fine.
Yeah. You're a cool man. You're a cool dude.
Yeah, like my friend Abdulaziz.
Yeah, and Mohammed Abdulaziz, a very good friend of mine too, is man in white, man. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Roland.
Yeah, you're a member of the Special Budget Committee.
I serve on the Local Government and Rural Development Committee and also the Poverty Reduction Strategy Committee of Parliament. Yeah. Okay. If you serve on a committee, it doesn't mean you have to look the way the committee is. Poverty reduction. Yes, poverty reduction. I'm not saying you should be poor, but of course you're not poor. But tragedy is falling a very good friend of mine. You're a pharmacist at the Presbyterian Hospital in Boko. You and your wife Flora, Sally for combat. Good morning to you. I know it's not a good time, and well, God has His reasons. My condolences. But I told you about all the things we were talking about, and we have the Minister of Information convening a press conference. There's a new format now. There'll be a bi-weekly press conference schedule with journalists interacting with them. And the first, well, on a Sunday, indicated a number of issues that the Information Minister wanted to talk about. But notably, you know, the minority before the close of the news day last week had been raising issues about the Office of Government Machinery, as indicated in the 2019 budget, increasing to about 1,614, a difference of more than 600 new staff, as they say. But the Information Minister has a contrary opinion.
I have with me here the 2019 budget and the 2018 budget statement. If you go to the 2018 budget statement, page 185, which outlines what we call the staff establishment and costs. Essentially what it does is that it outlines the maximum number of people you can have in any unit and the maximum amount of money that can be spent on them. So if you go to page 185, Office of Government Machinery, the ceiling for staff is 1,697. This is 2018. I provided it on the screens to my left and to my right. 1,697. If you come to the 2019 budget, and again you go to the MDA staff establishment and cost 2019, you will find that the Office of Government Machinery ceiling of staff is 1,614. In actual fact, therefore, the staff ceiling from 2018 to 2019 is going through a programmed reduction.
Also, you heard all that, but a number of these, and including others, are some of the line items on the budget or in the budget that the minority seem to have a concern with. But prominently, well, we want to give the first line of response to Mr. Anthony Efa. And Tony, you want to make commentary, compliment what the Minister of Information had been saying on the subject?
Yeah, Kojo Opan-Kroma is doing very well for the government. His new role as a substantive Minister for Information is letting the world know what is happening on a daily basis. And I'm happy with the initiative that twice in a week, he would like to speak to the public about what government is doing. His choice of a Sunday is very superb. We all know that people have come back from church or would be relaxing, and at the time you have the opportunity to listen to him. It sets the tone also for the week, so we all know what government did in the previous week and possibly what it's going to do in the coming weeks ahead. And I think this initiative must commend Kojo Opan-Kroma and his team for a good, well done. Such meetings would enable him, as it were, explain what the reality is on the ground, because it doesn't take too long for new ideas to come up. People would hazard some guesses regarding specific information that can easily be verified. And in the case of the staffing issue at the presidency, I think he took the opportunity to explain that the office of the president is just one institution among a group of other institutions, ministries, departments, and agencies that are under the Office of Government Machinery. And when we do the budget appropriations, and especially when we're doing the estimates, review of estimates, all these specific agencies, ministries and agencies come to Parliament with their individual estimates, allocations for the year. Globally,
when you're doing that, even the appropriation before the approval. Okay.
Yes, the approval, the reading comes first, the debates continue, and then we're now going to, from next week, in fact this week, from about Thursday, we're going to look at every specific department's budget allocation.
So the department heads or the finance heads will then come?
Yes, we invite the head of the agency.
To meet specific committees?
Yes, okay. Specific committees. So education will go to education, and then we have transport, and obviously the Office of Government Machinery comes to finance. And the Ministry of Finance, its own budgets come to the finance committee, as well as the...
Are you on the finance committee?
I am on the finance committee. And the Ghana Revenue Authority, GRA, they also come to meet the finance committee. So I think that this new initiative will really make Ghanaians understand what the realities are on the ground. It's going to take away the misinformation that is usually in public domain. And for those of us who may not have the opportunity to read from the source, we may be tempted to believe whatever is said on TV, on radio. And so Kojo's approach, this I think is good, and I always want him to do it. Twice is good, and then as we go along, if he can have other, you combine it with the other media openings that he has, like TV and radio, they're already doing that. The town hall meetings, he can continue to do that. So we just pray that what he does will really let Ghanaians understand, because the accusation or the criticism of government is that we are doing so much, yet we are not saying anything.
You are?
Well, that is the perception, and you have to take that into your strategy. I was speaking to a lady last night from Germany, and he seemed to know everything that the NDC government has said, but doesn't seem to know what NPP is saying. And her position is that we don't talk, we are working.
You mean you haven't communicated about free SHS enough?
And that is that was my worry.
NAPCO?
That was my worry. So,
I think we all do know.
Yeah, so I said to her
perhaps maybe there's not enough to communicate.
Yes, there's so much to communicate, to talk about. But then I don't know how the population seem to always hear NDC more than the MPP. That's why I don't know how we'll break the jinx.
And NDC will say, welcome to the table.
Yes, okay. So even though NPP is speaking and NDC is talking, the general feedback is that they seem to hear the NDC more. And so we need to up our game. And I think Kojo Opon's leadership
wants to be the man to fix that.
Yes, once he started it, we all have to follow through and then make sure that whatever government has done or is doing is in the public domain for all of us to understand and to see if there are challenges. That is also the time to hear from the Minister of Information. What is it that is our challenge and how is government intending to address it? It will now take away this, distortion of information or non-communication of activities or things that have been done by the government. And so, Kojo, well done, you and your team, and I think Ghanaians are happy with this initiative.
I see. You want to respond to that, and directly first is about the number of personnel who will be working in government machinery, and then it's not only about those in the Jubilee House, because we have when we're talking about the presidency, we have even Department of Parks and Gardens, some health directorate staff or department that are also part of it, as far as the convoluted figure is.
Good morning to you, Roland, and good morning to Honorable. Good morning to our viewers. You know, you remember in the run-up to the 2016 general elections, two keywords were used to describe President Mahama and the NDC: incompetence and corruption. This morning, the issue of the corruption, as far as I know, has not been tabled for discussion. But so I want to look at the issue of competency. I want us to compare the government of President Mahama and what President Akufo-Addo is running today to see which of them is really competent. Competency is all about efficiency. And my simple basic science would tell me that efficiency is output over labor, the number of people that you have employed to achieve a particular task. And so one would have thought that the NPP would have run this government with relatively smaller numbers to show efficiency. Interestingly, what they are doing is that they are employing more and more labor, and they are even achieving far, far less than we achieved under President Mahama. And that raises a question about efficiency and about competency. Now, President Mahama ran this country with less than 90 ministers and deputy ministers, including regional ministers, and was described as incompetent. You assume power, and you are running this country with 111 ministers. In fact, it all started with 110 ministers. The minority caucus in parliament, civil society organizations, the media, the ordinary Ghanaian all complain about it. We were shocked to the bone about the number of ministers and deputy ministers that were appointed to run the administration of President Akufo-Addo. As if to say that he didn't care, in his recent reshuffle, he increased the number by 1, making it 111 ministers and deputy ministers. We are worried because all these people would need to be maintained at the expense of the taxpayer. The ordinary girl selling pure water by the roadside would have to contribute to buy all these ministers and deputy ministers their V8 Land Cruisers, get them security 24 hours, pay for their garden boys, pay for their housemates, and almost everything.
Are you saying that the ministers, just because we've had incremental numbers in comparison to the NDC administration, I don't have portfolio, don't have specific assigned duties?
It's not about assigned duties.
Then what is it about?
The administration that they are running, in terms of structure, is not anything different from what we did. Of course, our output was much, much higher than what we are seeing today. I am telling you that the ordinary taxpayer, including the peasant farmer in my village, Kulinchegu, would have to contribute through VAT and other taxes to maintain these 111 ministers. As if to say that was not enough, they have piled the government machinery in the year 2016 with some 1,697 officers. President Mahama ran that same government machinery with less than 500 staff. And let me tell you, they have not added a single institution to what we left behind. Maslock, Ghana AIDS Commission, Parks and Garden, and all the institutions that they are talking about today existed under the government machinery under President Mahama and President Mills. No new institution has come on board.
The tax is different. It's enormous. You haven't been hearing government communicators.
It's not about the
NDC, according to government communicators, left this country with a lot of liabilities.
That is a different matter that we can.
It will take proper experts for them to be able to fill the gaping holes.
When you have experts, you don't need huge numbers. And if you want us to talk about the liability that we're alleged to have left behind, that would be a different matter that we can discuss. But I'm telling you, and that's a matter of public record, that in 2018, and that has been confirmed by the Minister for Information, and mind you, we don't need people who have nice faces to run an administration. We need people who can speak to the truth. He himself has admitted that in the year 2018, a staff strength of 1,697 was what they had within the government machinery. He's beating his chest that they have been able to reduce it to 1,614 in the 2019 budget.
That's true.
That's true. But do we need these huge numbers to work under the government machinery? And it is not even about the numbers. It's about the quantum of resources. In the year 2018, about 1.7 billion was allocated to the government machinery. As we speak today, almost 2 billion is allocated to the same government machinery in the year 2019.
Per the budget?
Per the budget. That is, go to page, I'm not too sure, but go to, I think, page 207. That is our worry. That is our worry. That you claim to be competent and you are running this country, the same country size, almost the same population, the same complexities of issues that President Mahama did with less than 90 ministers. You
didn't hear government communicate. The issues are enormous.
You are doing that with 111 ministers. You are engaging about 1,697 officers under the so-called government machinery. You are spending over 2 billion on them, when indeed the real public sector is suffering. There are no jobs for the teeming unemployed youth, and all that they do. Roland, you are a media person. You can go and cross-check. They have flooded the Flagstaff House with party boys whose duty is to do social media. They don't do anything that will bring food onto our tables. All that they are engaging in social media and creating mischief. These are party boys who are being paid for their loyalty to the party. And that's worrying.
But that's not fair. They are working.
Trust me, I say most of the young men and women there are engaged in social media. To the extent that you remember when they were asked to bring the list, they brought, there was a title called Lady in Red. Even up to now, nobody has been able to explain to us.
I mean, Lady in Waiting. Or...
Lady in Waiting. Exactly. Sorry for. They have not told us what that person does.
You don't know where.
Duplication of duties.
Let me just go to
engage in social media and nothing beyond that. That is worrying. We want President Akufo-Addo to reinvigorate the public sector, create a conducive environment for private sector to thrive, recruit young men and women of our country, release their energies for accelerated development. That is what we need. And Roland, as if that was not enough, apart from these 111 ministers and deputy ministers and over 1,600 staff under the government and machinery, almost all ministers and deputy ministers today have special assistants. They have virtually assumed the role and function of chief directors. Go to the ministries. The civil service men and women are complaining on a quiet.
Who has complained to you?
They are complaining on a quiet.
Who has complained to you?
You think I would mention the name to you? Civil servants, for them to be fired? They are complaining. Even recently, the CLOSAC had a cause to issue a statement on that matter, that the so-called special assistants to ministers and deputy ministers have taken over the role of civil servants. That is worrying. When you come into government with a pledge to create jobs, these are not the types of jobs that we expect President Akufo-Addo to create for party boys. We expect him to grow the private sector. We expected him to do the 1G, 1F. That would grow our economy, that would bring in more revenue and employ people. That is not what they are doing. This is the most laziest form of governance I have ever seen in my entire life. The most laziness I have seen in my entire life. This is reckless and irresponsible.
Oh.
It is reckless.
Yeah, well, okay. I think my brother Abdulaziz is doing his best on this subject matter. What is important, I think his emphasis has been on the 111 ministers. And let me tell you that when he said Mahama worked with 90 ministers, or what is 99 ministers, what was a wage bill to GDP? It was about 42%. And we said that all the tax revenues that we collected in the year, we spent all on wages, salaries and wages, interest payments, and then statutory transfers. That was it. Now, that percentage, in spite of that bloated figure, if you should call it, the rates, the wage and salary is taking just 28% of the income of government, the revenues of government.
But we're generating more these days.
So we are generating more.
Compared to the last year. So if you do the rate to GDP, then that's not fair.
So now we have been able to reduce the proportion of revenues that goes to wages and salaries from about 42 to 28%. It's not comparable with the interest amount that is allocated for the interest, which is also about 28%. Now, with that lower number of ministers, let us look at some statistics, if we have to go into that. What was the GDP growth? The nominal GDP growth that we left in 2016 was just about 3%. Okay. Now, we left about 8%. This indicates a lot of goodwill. I can show you a lot more. For instance, if you look at the GDP per capita, you left it at about 1,400. We are doing 1,900. in 2018, 1,900.
There's been rebasing of the economy.
Yeah, the rebasing of the economy aside, because the rebasing effectively would even reduce the ratio of the wages and salaries to GDP.
No, I'm talking in relation to the per capita.
Yeah,
okay. Definitely once it's been rebased, the per capita will go up.
Okay, no, but of course 2018 numbers indicate that we are already above what we inherited at 1,500 in 2016. 1,500. We are now doing 1,900. There are many other indicators that we can look at. What is important for us is that it is how the leader of government or how the government perceives the delivery of those initiatives that it has. If indeed John Mahama's government did well with the 99, why is that within 2 years all our roads, everybody is demonstrating.
So
we'll come to roads.
Yes. So don't take the wind out of my sails.
Okay, so every sector, the real sector growth, I would like to read the real sector growth.
Are you having the budget there with you?
Yeah, I have it here. I have a summary.
Okay, you want to take us through some of the numbers, the macroeconomic indicators? But don't worry. But I think generally what you're trying to say is that overall there's been tremendous growth, especially at the macro level.
Yes, at the macro level, it's so exciting. Look at the effort of government in trying to stabilize that. To maintain the rate of growth of the economy. That in itself should give a minimum indication to all Ghanaians that it doesn't matter if we have 110 or 111 million, as long as the output is higher. What is this reference to people who are doing social media? I mean, I think it's an affront to most of them. Everybody does social media. I did social media this morning, and I'm sure he does it. Roland, I'm sure you've done it today. So that in itself, as to productivity, where it is necessary, some of us, we do even our business using social media. So that should not be a cause for worry, as long as we spend time focusing on what the ministries require. Yesterday, for instance, we had a retreat, and we had one-on-one encounter with the ministers, the majority caucus, and every minister was questioning what is it that he was doing. What came out is that we needed the information minister to gather as much as possible every activity of each minister on a monthly or quarterly basis, depending on what is convenient. So everybody knows what each one is doing. The minister for monetary evaluation, was there, and he supported that view, that we need to know what our ministers are doing, so that it's not about 110, but it's about the output.
Okay.
And as we go to the various sectors, we will see what our ministers are doing.
If I have to summarize, before you come in, if I have to summarize what you're saying that because we've seen tremendous growth, and of course it's translated into good indicators at the macro level, that's a good justification for incremental number of personnel that could be assigned to do whatever work as far as the structure of government is concerned. What are you saying, sir?
You see, what I'm saying is that it is the output, the number that you put in. He said labor and something. He did some science calculation.
Output over labor.
For example, you take from South Africa to the UK, etc. Approximately, they have ministers less than 40.
Yes. It depends on what they are focused on to do.
Their economies are bigger. You are aware.
I know their economies are bigger. That is why you would need maybe fewer people to manage a big economy. Ours is small. Look, the total GDP, as we see today, from when God made the world, is just about 206 billion Ghana cedis. In dollar terms, it's less than 50 billion. And that is what you and I will survive on if we don't increase it. And if you look at the rate of growth of the GDP, the nominal rate of growth, between 2012 and 2016, the maximum that the NDC did, or let me use the average, was adding about 25 billion cedis per annum to the GDP. From 2017, consistently on average, we added about 40 billion. We are doing twice what NDC was doing, so that we can grow the base. When you grow the base, we have a lot of new resources. We have opportunity to tax and generate more revenue. So we should focus on growing the economy. When we're able to do that.
I'll put my question again to you.
Yes.
And you're saying that, well, because we're seeing tremendous growth, that is a justification for the having higher numbers.
No, let me say it again.
To ensure that we spearhead that growth. Is that what you're saying?
The minister has told us that the numbers at the office of the presidency is rather reducing. That's what he said. And I think that is the debate. It's not to say that we are adding more, but mine is more of explaining that even if it is 110 or 120 ministers, what is the output? The other side which we need to take care of is that out of the 110 or 11 ministers that we have, about 60 ministers are MPs. 60 ministers or deputy ministers are MPs who already have a basic salary. So it is the few, so you see that we have more MP ministers than non-MP ministers.
So it doesn't mean that we're spending more necessarily.
That is why the wage bill, in spite of the big figure, is reduced to about 28% of the total revenue from about 42.
That percentage comparison, I'm saying that if we look at the quantums in terms of if it's the allocation, if it's 600, we're not going to find 600 in 2016 and find 600, or find 500 in 2017 and find 400 in 20. It's rather going to increase because the economy has grown. And so if you want to do the comparison relative to GDP, definitely it's going to reduce.
It's because the GDP is
You're
growing.
A finance man. You agree with me.
Is growing.
You agree with me.
Because
so the economy is growing. So definitely once it's growing, the rate at which you spend on wages and salaries in comparison to how big your economy or GDP is going to reduce.
Yeah.
So that's a justification. So you're going to have lesser percentages.
But the total, even if you looked at the absolute numbers that are projected, it's about 19 billion cedis that's going to go into wages and salaries.
I do understand. I do understand all that you're saying.
So the averages or these ratios are just to indicate the relationship between the wages and the revenues.
It's important nonetheless. It's not as if to take away your argument.
All I would say is that there's, if for example, the NDC had told us that when you work with 60, you get this output.
You don't think we need to have smaller numbers of ministers at all? It looks like that's not an argument for government.
No. It's not about
government is rather
60,
justifying why we have the high numbers because the economy is growing. So you need to. But I'm also saying that we have bigger economies that grow bigger, and they have smaller people that manage them.
Well, like I said, the president has a vision for Ghana. And he wants to develop this with 110 ministers. 111 ministers. And what we need to do is to hold government.
If you look through the budget, you have the Minister for Special, is it Special Initiatives?
Special Development Initiative.
Special Development Initiatives. And she is heading a ministry at the presidency that's building boreholes, building chip compounds, and doing all that. Building boreholes, that's a work for who?
Water and sanitation.
Water and sanitation.
So, and building chip compounds, that's a work for who?
Ministry of Health.
Let me try to explain.
You do consider, yeah. You consider this, but you keep that response. But look, we have to be realistic. I know what you're coming to tell me. We've had oil,
Let's speak to my paper.
Okay, I've not seen it. All right.
Let's go ahead.
So what will be your justification for what he's responded to?
You see, Honorable.
That the economy that you left,
you see,
now there's a great justification. The economy has grown tremendously. Have you cited the target for the next financial year?
Roland.
Yes, sir.
Let us be very fair to ourselves. And Honorable is a member of the Finance Committee.
Yeah.
The economy is not static. The GDP of Ghana, as we speak today, cannot be same as it was last year. In fact, you cannot be as old as you were last year. The GDP of Ghana has never been static.
Are you saying we don't have countries that were poorer this year compared to last year? Is that what you're saying?
No. Poverty reduction is different from GDP growth. These are two different variables altogether. Now let us speak to the issue of the growth. Honorable, you know better that non-oil growth, when you continuously refer to 3.7, and I've heard the Minister for Finance and the President refer to the growth of 3.7 in 2016 as the lowest for the last 23 years. The question I ask you, which you know better, what was the non-oil growth in 2016?
So meaning that if you remove the element of oil and its contribution.
It is not for nothing that when we are calculating GDP, we have non-oil growth and we have growth that includes oil. It is because the oil industry does not fit too much into our economy. It does not guarantee jobs for our young people. It only brings us revenue, right? That's why we have oil and non-oil growth. In 2016, the very year that you claim we did worse. Under President Mahama, the non-oil growth was about 5.7. Far more than what we achieved in 2017 and 2018. Far more than what we achieved for non-oil growth. The records are there. You see, what made us to grow at 3.7 was the fact that we did very poorly in the area of oil industry, the oil and gas industry. For instance, government has targeted to rig in about 1.5 billion in respect of oil. We ended up getting around 600 million Ghana cedis in case of oil. 2019, you are anticipating to rig in as much as 5 billion Ghana cedis. 2018, you got as much as 3 billion Ghana cedis. You know why you got those resources? Because of the investments of President Mahama and the NDC. You are aware of what we are getting from the 10 projects. You know what we are getting from Sankofa Jinyami. These were all investments supervised by President Mahama, the man that was described as incompetent and corrupt. In fact, I remember even the 10 project, when they came to sign, the ENI came to sign the contract on the 10 project, the President Akufo-Addo had alleged that the contract or the arrangement was inflated by some $7 million US. An allegation that you have abandoned in power. And so I'm telling you that when you want to talk about growth, let us talk about non-oil growth and let's talk about the entire GDP of this country. And when you do that segregation, you will know that we even grew much better. In 2016, when we had Dumso, we grew much better than you recorded in 2017 and 2018. That's a matter of public record. And the budget will speak to that. Now, Roland, they are talking about outputs, what they have achieved. With the 111 ministers and deputy ministers, with the over 1,600 staffers at the presidency, tell us what you have achieved. How many kilometers of road have you fixed? How many basic schools have you constructed? How many secondary schools have you constructed? What have you added to access to electricity? What have you added to access to safe drinking water?
But that's not fair, is it?
It is fair.
There's implementation of free SHS.
You see,
are your constituent beneficiaries of free SHS?
It's a nationwide policy.
Okay.
Remember,
there's also an initiative, Planting for Food and Jobs. And do you know that over the period, according to government estimates and the records that we've been told as media that we've also verified, the estimates are that, of course, we've not gone to the grounds to know whether...
What you should do?
745,000 people have gained employment in the agriculture sector alone because of Planting for Food and Jobs.
Roland, the Minister for Agri can only engage the media on those issues. He cannot repeat those numbers in Parliament.
Why?
Because that's not true. 745,000 people employed in 2017 alone as a result of Planting for Food and Jobs.
Why is it not possible?
That cannot be true. The entire public service of Ghana is about 600,000 people. For you to roll out a project and claim that you have created 745 jobs without telling us the constituents of those jobs, how can you assume that because people came for 745,000 bags of fertilizers, you have created those number of jobs? How do you say that a person who has been farming for the past 30, 40 years comes to take a fertilizer from you and you claim that you have created a job for him? That cannot be. They can't explain those numbers. Look, even Planting for Food and Jobs, Roland, the media should go onto the ground. When you do a project like Planting for Food and Jobs, we expect crop yield. We expect crop yield to go high. We expect food prices to go down.
Haven't the output been high?
That is not true. Go to the Ghana Central Service data. Go to GSS.
We have stories, of course, replicated in the media about gluts of produce, etc. from farming areas.
That's not true. But that crop yield is not seeing any increment. Prices of foodstuffs are increasing at the very time that we are being told about the fruits of Planting for Food and Jobs. And so tell us, after all these 111 ministers and deputy ministers, over 1,600 staffers, the special assistants, and over the 50 billion borrowing.
You have to put that into perspective.
And over the
because the 1,614 is for the Office of Government Machinery. It includes parks and gardens and the rest.
But I have told you, what are they doing today that we didn't do?
As we transition into the next discussion, it's all related to infrastructure and what has been done by the Akufo-Addo-led government or not. And the president traveled to the Afram Plains and the chiefs. If you take a look at the front page of the Daily Guide newspaper, it says that chiefs hail Nana. They're talking about President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo for not flying chopper to Afram Plains. And so by riding his car, and if he took the pontoon, it depends on which section of the routes that he would be using to the Afram Plains. He may have seen the bad roads. And so that's what the chief was indicating. But when the vice president also was in Nandom to celebrate a festival with the chiefs and people of the area, he seemed to have questioned claims by the John Mahama administration that they had constructed roads and other forms of infrastructure. Let's get that insight, Obaraiba, and then we'll ask the critical questions on the subject.
$1 billion GEFAN facility. We are going to proceed and complete these uncompleted projects as well as construct new projects of infrastructure for our senior high schools and vocational schools.
He then went for the jugular and reintroduced what has come to be known as the record challenge. He challenged the opposition NDC to show one major road they have completed in 8 years of their reign in the Upper West region.
In the last 8 years of the previous NDC government, there was not one major road completed in the Upper West region. Not one. And I challenge the NDC to come and show us one road, major road in the Upper West region that they completed in 8 years of government. One, Bakupe, just one road.
So the vice president kept repeating the refrain, Bakupe, just one road completed in the Upper West region. Sir, you never did anything. But should the vice president be going this way?
Of course, we have to communicate, like you said. We need to communicate what we're doing. I don't know whether you allow me 2 minutes to talk about economy.
I'll give you a minute, yes.
Just 1 minute. Now, the question was about real GDP growth. And I would like to say that the real GDP growth, and this is from the 2019 budget, is that for the first half of the year was 5.4%, including oil. Now, without oil, real GDP growth, excluding oil, was 4.9, 5.4 and 4.9.
Which year?
So 2018, half year. All right. What that means is that the contribution of oil.
2016. Let's check for 2016. Not oil.
Yeah, I'll come to that.
I don't have.
I have from 2012,
okay.
So I can give you all that.
Okay.
Now, the real GDP growth without oil, as I made of 2018, was 4.9%, almost 5%. Now, what that tells us is that the oil sector contributes to the economy, but by how much? If you read further, it says that petroleum revenues, which are expected to grow by 30% in 2018, is expected to contribute as little as 9.4% of domestic revenue. Simply, we are saying that even if the petroleum sector should boom, the expectation is that we can't get more than 10% of the total revenue from petroleum sector. So it's not a big employer. The petroleum sector is very important. It's a strategic industry that we have. But when it comes to the benefits, we are getting less than 10% of our revenue, revenues, domestic revenues from that side. How many people does that industry really employ? So sincerely, the petroleum sector, like I said, is good that we have it, but it is not a major contributor to GDP. It's not a major contributor to our revenues. It doesn't hire people. All right. Now, going to the question about infrastructure, and we say that should the vice president go this way? Yes, the vice president need to let Ghanaians know the state of the roads, infrastructure that we had. Only 2 years, and all the roads in Ghana which were purported to have been built and constructed are all down. And every day, if you go to Expo of Mbrakwa, my own constituency, just about a week ago, there was a demonstration by the drivers, rightly so, because the roads are terrible, and we have to fix it. The rains, that is a very heavy rainfall area.
Are you saying that after almost 24 months in office?
Yes, so we are committed to dealing with that. But then
But you didn't expect the NDC to build every road in Ghana, did you?
Of course. So I didn't expect that it should do that. But then within
you've seen some of the nice roads that have been done before the end of 2016. You've seen them.
Whatever roads were done, remember there were also other roads that the MPP did when we came to government. Every government that comes to power does some infrastructure of some roads. You see, but when you look at the rural roads, where we get the most of votes for the NDC, the roads are in bad shape. And we are committed to doing that. In 2019, the budget is making provision within the budget is up to spend 8.5 billion cedis on infrastructure. 8.5 billion cedis is no small money. Aside that, the Ghana Education Trust Fund is raising 1.5 billion US dollars equivalent in cedis to complete ongoing education infrastructure.
Is that what we securitize the...
Yes, okay. With future receivables.
Yeah, sure.
Next 10 years, the monies that ordinarily will go to GET fund.
What percentage then has
it's about 40%
of the GET fund?
What is what
the GET fund receipts?
Yes.
That's what has been
expected GET fund receipts. About 40% of it would go into education infrastructure. And that is huge, 1.5 billion.
And that investment is just for the next financial year? Or
it's for the next 2 years. We're going to work towards...
Before we
continue in government. You see, now again, railway infrastructure, other major roads, interchanges, we have been able to secure about $2 billion under a Sino-Hydro program, where most of these roads will be fixed. And there's already a list of major projects, infrastructure projects, including railroads, that will be constructed within this period of 2 years. The monies that we have, the argument has been that it's a loan, it's not a loan. I think we've gone past that debate. At the last meeting, it was evident that we are using our own resources, which are in the ground, part of it, to secure this funding for infrastructure development. 2019, the minister said to us that in the past, our challenge has been revenue mobilization, domestic revenue mobilization, and so we cannot continue to rely on that for infrastructure development. As a result, there are many, many steps that we have taken, and the long-term view is that we have the PPP, public-private partnerships in infrastructure development, so that we can have a country that
has always been there. That's why Setepe said that we need to have smart borrowing.
We don't even have a law governing PPPs, you see. But I was in Sydney about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and all the roads are by private participation, and you can't believe what revenues they generate.
All that I want to say is that the idea you're saying has been mooted for the last 3 or 4 years.
But
so
it's not new. There's no legislation.
It's a process, it's not.
Yes, it's a process.
I think we're
hoping to conclude that, and then we'll have investors.
I think that
coming.
is good. Yes. That aspect about making sure that we have the needed regulation for PPP, because in the UK they have it.
Yes,
if you just check Google now,
once it's with us,
encyclopedia is always available.
Investments trooping into the country, so that we can have all these investments in infrastructure. Yeah. The railway line, if we're to do even from Kumasi to Paga in the northern sector, look at the number of economic activities that will develop along the railway line to the north, and then to cut goods and goods from our ports to the hinterlands. This is a big thing that I think we all should support the government to achieve. So that at the end
government
of the
has our support. The thing is
that is good.
We've had constant demonstration. I went to cover one about a month and 2 weeks ago. That was 6 weeks ago at Insakina, just Greater Accra region. And, a number of roads have been done as well, but more needs to be done.
Yes, a lot more.
I think that playing politics with infrastructure becomes a bit of a hazy issue. But the thing is, the reality is, Ghana is a developing country. We will need more. But what the Vice President is saying, almost like just taking a dig at the NDC and saying that you say you have done infrastructure, but we're not seeing anything on the ground.
Roland, it's rather unfortunate that the Vice President and his boss, His Excellency the President, still seem to be in the campaign mood. They need to transit their minds and their bodies from campaigning to governing. That is not what I'm seeing, and that is worrying. This is not the first time that the Vice President has thrown a challenge of that sort to us. The recent one he did was about social intervention. And in fact, the Vice President has forgotten that even he himself, He's a walking example of our interventions. He should be tracing his history, how he came to Bank of Ghana. His very existence at Bank of Ghana and subsequently become a running mate to President Akufo-Addo. He's a walking example of our intervention.
Social?
You see, I say he's a walking example.
Meaning what?
Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia.
That he came to the Bank of Ghana.
When did he come to Bank of Ghana? And
during the NDC period.
Who brought him from Canada to Bank of Ghana?
Very well.
We're not discriminating in what we do. So it's a walking example of our interventions. In any case, when you want to talk about infrastructure, you see, the MPP cannot compare what they have achieved so far within the last 2 years to what we achieved from 2013 to 2014. I don't want to use our 8-year period or the 4-year period of President Mahama to compare to what they have done for the past 2 years. That would be unfair to them. What we have achieved from 2013 to 2014, compare it to what they have achieved so far, and our record would dwarf them. He's talking about upper West region, that we've done nothing, that no road was completed. The one municipality routes has been completed. He's aware. One municipality routes has been completed. UJSWA campus, the inner roads of the school, were worked on under President Mahama. These are living examples, things that he cannot deny. We never claim that we had fixed all the problems in this country. Never. And no government can do that. We only did what we could do. And we are challenging them to do what they can also do. So far, they have done nothing to show. You see, when you talk about infrastructure and you make references to Sino-Hydro of $2 billion US, that's why they say the budget is a Chinese budget. You are hinging almost everything on the $2 billion Sino-Hydro deal and another $3 billion CDB loan, a facility also from China.
Well, because they are sure.
You see, why?
Very confident government.
Under President Mills, have you forgotten that we had also gone for the same CDB loan?
But this is not President Mills' government.
Take it easy. $3 billion loan facility. They released only $1 billion that was used for the Atuabo gas project, and the $2 billion never came.
Because you couldn't meet the conditionality.
The MPP would be in serious troubles if, for any reason, the Chinese people fails on the disbursement of the $3 billion CDB facility, and also the $2 billion dollar facility from Sino-Hydro. Now, when we talk about, we have gone past whether it is a loan or a barter trade. We haven't gone past there.
Why not?
The 170 billion loan debt portfolio that the Bank of Ghana is reporting today excludes the $2 billion Sino-Hydro deal. At the exchange rate of 5, $2 billion US would give you 10 billion Ghana cedis. In all forms and shapes, that facility is not a barter trade. It's a loan. But we understand why you are now running away from loans. But we understand why today when you go for loans, you cannot qualify them as loans because of what we had said earlier about loans.
But the minority. You wrote to the IMF. The IMF came to give...
Have you seen that letter? Have you seen a letter from IMF indicating that it was a barter trade and not a loan facility?
We've cited some communication to that effect.
Oh, Roland, have you cited any communication from IMF?
Your colleague,
Keso
Latufos, did he get any response from the IMF?
Oh, you see, Roland.
I'm asking you because he applied. Did he get? You're asking me whether.
Not that I know of.
Okay.
But in any case, do we need to write to IMF to know whether a facility is a loan or barter trade?
But that's
if
what
I come to you,
but that's what you
no,
did.
Roland, if I come to you,
but that's
to borrow money,
but let's move on.
If I come to you to borrow money, do we need a third party to tell me whether I have come for a loan from you? I know I've come for money from you.
But it's not a loan. The IMF says this is it doesn't smack of a loan.
What makes it a barter trade?
We have resources beneath the earth. And
let me tell you,
you're using that as collateral.
All the loans that we have
today. Once we're able to process it and get
Roland, take it easy. All the loans we have today, we would either pay with our taxes or with our natural resources proceeds. It doesn't change anything. In any case, Roland, there's an element of deferred payment here. We are not paying the monies now.
What true?
There's a deferment payment. What's a loan? What is debt? It's a deferment payment. It attracts interest. It has all the features of a loan facility. But like I said, when the vice president said that we have a lot of money in this country, we don't need to borrow, they can govern without borrowing.
The government said that?
Oh, President, then candidate Vice running mate Mahmoud Bawumia made remarks to that effect, that they could run this country without borrowing, and that he had worked at the Bank of Ghana, and he knows that we have money in this country. Today, when they go to borrow, they can't be proud of themselves. We borrowed, and we can show you what we did with the amounts of money that we borrowed. You are going to borrow over 50 billion, minus the Sino Hydro deal of $2 billion. Tell us 1 kilometer of road that you have fixed. Tell us if you have been able to construct a kindergarten. Tell us if you have added access to safe drinking water in this country. Tell us if you have added a single megawatt of power.
Why do you try to... You mean on a massive scale? Or?
Roland.
Because boreholes are being built in.
Oh, Roland. I say they should tell us.
Water systems are being implemented for communities.
Where?
They're existing.
Where?
They're existing for...
They should tell us 1 kilometer of road that they have fixed. You saw the asphalt that we did in Accra, the relaying of asphalt in Accra under President Mahama, during the last days of President Mahama.
Actually, did in other regions as well, yeah.
Exactly.
Capitals of other.
So they should tell us, over the 50 billion borrowing, we have collected over 70 billion in tax revenue, over 70 billion since we assumed power.
But that's
we
just
have borrowed
simplifying
over 50
the issue. You're a member of parliament. You just don't simplify the issue that you collected 70 billion. What did you use it for? That's not a fair argument.
So what do you want me to say? That we have gone to take taxes in excess of 70 billion. No. And that's why we must speak to the issues. Okay. That you have gone to take taxes over 70 billion.
This is a budget that you've brought. And all appropriations are made based on the budget.
Okay. So
you cannot say that revenue that's reported to you has just been thrown where? Deliverables. Is that what you're saying?
Deliverables of the budget. In 2018, all the roads that you said you would do, you have repeated those same roads in 2019. A very good example is the Tamale Yende road that you promised in 2018 budget that you were fixing and monies were allocated to it. You have repeated that same road facility and you have also allocated resources. And so we are simply asking that governance is about delivering goods and services.
And so far you say they haven't delivered.
What have you seen yourself?
Free SHS. There's free SHS planting for food and jobs.
Let me tell you something.
One district, one factory is at an advanced stage. Do you know one district, one factory is at an advanced stage?
Come and check at the Parliamentary Hands Act and you will know. That free senior
let me give you the last one. It looks like my time is up. I give you a minute. Just summarize.
Okay. All right. A minute. Just to say that we can explain all the 50 billion, what we use it for, including arrears that we are paying for ongoing projects. We could have abandoned those projects, but at whose cost? Ghanaians' cost.
The debt has increased.
Yes.
So don't say you have no profile. It has increased.
No. Let me talk to you about that.
Because you have no profile.
We have paid arrears, and I think the minister on debating, the deputy minister for, you mean you didn't leave anything? All those projects that were signed, contracts that were signed on 31st December.
How much is paid as interest annually?
This year we are looking at approximately 19 billion.
No. What was paid from last year? Because the borrowing, we've been borrowing from every year.
No, we pay a lot.
Okay, so we're estimating for 2019.
But what I want to say in conclusion is that when Abdulaziz is not sure about Sino Hydro coming, I'm telling you already we have about 649 has come.
Yes.
So to say it's not coming, it's not the case.
I didn't say so.
Yeah.
I said you will be in dire consequences
but the
if it doesn't come. The 3 billion CDB facility.
That is a remote possibility. But the truth is that the minister says we have enormous credibility now.
Credibility?
Yes. Enormous credibility on the international market to raise funding with a B rating, with all the micro fundamentals improving. The minister is very confident to go to the world market.
But that's the point. They're saying that we said, while in opposition, you said, well, even if the ratings were good, you still wouldn't go and borrow.
Never did we say we were not going to borrow. What we said at the time, and I'm sure you have all the records, is to indicate to you that we are going to get value for everything that we borrow.
Ghanaians have forgiven you about the borrowing. Today you are borrowing, we are forgiving you. What we now want is what we have used the borrowings for.
Yes.
All right, we are going to see let's end our discussion this morning.
We are going to see a lot of it.
You know, we have a new initiative coming up. It's we have a department called Thought Leadership. Okay. And so we bring about good discussions and we have an initiative called Scorecard. Okay. It's going to do a public assessment of the performance of the Akufo-Addo-led government 2 years into office. Yes. So
the last one you did, what was the results? I saw some online posts that you did.
No mischief. All right. So Anthony Efa is a member of Parliament for Esukuma Odobrin Brakwa constituency. He's a member of Parliament's Finance, Works and Housing Committees. You're too Charlie. And then works. You get money, finance, money there. And then also we have Mohammed Abdulaziz, member of Parliament for Myong. Thanks for joining me, Mohammed.
Your favorite constituency, I know.
Myong, yes, I know it off the cuff.
You have to visit.
But let's bring you the latest, because our latest thought leadership event is called the Scorecard, and Joy FM Thought Leadership is bringing to us a scorecard. It's 10 hours of assessment of the Akufo-Addo-led government and its promise of change. So what's your scorecard? Which part of the team's performance is strong? So we'll let you in on how you can be part of this conversation as we roll it out today. And we'll be having, a representative from our thought leadership right here in the studio. So Nico Puku will be joining me. Stay with us.